This week on The Communicators, a discussion with California Congresswoman Anna Eshoo. This conversation looks at the government's role in spreading broadband access in the U.S. and the state of digital television transition.
Our guest is a member of the House Telecom and Internet Subcommittee and a member of that. Thank you for joining us, Anna Eshoo, on The Communicators.
I'm delighted, and it's an honor to be with you.
And also joining us to help with questioning, Ann Viegel with Communications Daily. She serves as their Associate Managing Editor.
Nice to be here.
Congresswoman, to start off, this morning, as we're taping on Tuesday, you had a hearing looking at the digital television transition.
Yes.
What was the goal of that meeting?
Well, the goal of the meeting, I think, was to find out. We've had many hearings. This is the 6th or 7th hearing on the transition, to see how we're doing across the country. And the chairman of the Federal Communications Commission, Chairman Martin, was there. The assistant secretary that helps to implement the law and the statutes, as well as the GAO. But the real question was that there was a test program that took place in Wilmington, I believe, North Carolina. And so many members directed themselves to questions about how it went, how many people called in, what the problems were, et cetera, et cetera. My overall sense of this is that, people will zero in on this at the last minute. They're not doing it, for the most part, ahead of time. And B, we need to be prepared for that. I also asked the chairman about a quiet time where broadcasters and the cable industry would come together and agree about the length of that transition, because a big thing's going to take place in the country in January. Now, the broadcasters said that they were cooperate between February and March and that, but the NFL playoffs are in January. And I don't think we want anything to go dark during the playoffs. So there's still a lot at hand. The administration insists that in statute that the certificates, the coupons that people have gotten, cannot be extended. And I've never believed that that was the case. They insist on it.
Will there be a call for extending them?
Well, I think that my own sense is that we'll need to do that because people will do this at the last minute. Plus, people have gotten these coupons, vouchers, and they're kind of sitting around the house, and they expire. They expire. So anyway, we've come a distance. An effort is being made. Do I think that it's near complete and as close to perfection as possible? No. We have more work to do.
I wanted to ask you about the funding for the coupons. I understand that the agency in charge of managing the program wants more money from Congress to send out additional coupons. And it needs Congress to pass legislation in order to do that. What do you think is the possibility of getting that done?
Well, it was raised in the hearing, and the chairman, Mr. Markey, said, if you're going to do this, this is to the administration, hurry up and let us know exactly what it is. So we'll have to hear from them. We'll have to hear from them.
Do you think that if they do let Congress know that there's enough time, there's only a couple of weeks left, I think, in the House, would there be enough time for the entire Congress?
It could be maybe part of a continuing resolution. I don't know exactly what the vehicle would be, but it's their responsibility to not only supply the information that raises the case for X number of dollars. That's their responsibility. They give it to us, and then it becomes ours.
And so there's no sense of what that dollar figure might be?
No, they didn't say today. They didn't say today.
On to another subject. Next week, the FCC is going to be looking at rules for auctioning spectrum that was supposed to be for public safety. We've already had a failed auction on that matter. Have you looked at those rules, and what do you think of the proposal that the chairman has put forward?
I haven't reviewed those rules, but I look forward to that part that relates to public safety, spectrum for public safety, really being robust. We are now post 9/11, 7 years out. As someone that has worked since the mid-90s on E911, I remember years and years and years ago, then Vice President Gore saying that Anna is the E911 queen. So it took a long time to even get attention on that. It came to the fore because one of the last things that people recall, their loved ones being on their cell phones calling, but that the E911 system was really not in place. Now, from hearings at the subcommittee, my sense that I took out of the public safety discussion is that, first of all, it wasn't structured very well. Right. And you had different organizations disagreeing with other organizations and who was with whom and for what reason. And at the end of that hearing, my sense was they really have to get their act together. This is a new day, a new era, and much rides on this. So I hope what the FCC is considering will reflect a 21st century system. We can do with nothing less than that. And that these sometimes provincial ways, the old ways that dominated the older days, that is swept away and that we move into the future, that it's a 21st century system for public safety, which is what we are responsible for in public service. Public health and public safety, those are two major responsibilities and things that people cannot do for themselves.
One of the initial concerns going into looking at the spectrum sale was that can a public and private partnership be established, and how do you meet the need for the emergency responders, but by the same time, if you're having a private partner, and how do they make money on the side as well? Are those two issues need to be reconciled as far as this time round, or do you think a whole new structure?
Well, I think if you're going to have both, they have to be very carefully reconciled, because in the public sector, we're not for profit. That's not what we're designed to do. The private sector is. I don't hold that against them. But if a for-profit system is driving the public system, then you're going to have a conflict. So I hope that the FCC deconflicts this because we can't have a half-baked system. It's just far too important.
Have they talked about what this spectrum sale will look like as far as the details and how they plan to do it this time rather than last time, and how they intend to have someone actually bid on it this time around?
Well, it was so poorly structured that it wasn't bid on. Doesn't that say something?
I think this time they're proposing regional licenses with the possibility of a national license. But one concern is that an auction isn't likely, or Chairman Martin said possibly until next April, putting it past the transition. Do you think that do you think it's going to continue to be put off and put off?
Well, I think that makes it very awkward, because if today's chairman is saying April of '09, then it will be at least a year, I think. By the time a new administration comes in, is up, functioning, et cetera, I think that would put it off for almost a year. And I think that would be highly unfortunate. So I hope that the structure that's put together is a robust and very sound one, so that they can move forward. If it's structured right, people will respond.
Well, talking about structuring, I wanted to move on to broadband. I was at a
one of my favorite topics.
And there's a lot of discussion in the presidential campaigns about broadband, and this morning in the Senate Commerce Committee, Chairman Inouye talked about his initiative. Do you have any sense, this is the mapping initiative, do you have a sense of whether that particular initiative could get through in the remaining?
Well, I have some ideas about initiatives because I've offered one myself. But first of all, to the listeners, broadband is essential that it penetrate and reach every part of our country, every community, and every citizen. Many, many decades ago, the Congress of the United States decided that everyone should have telephone service, regardless of where they live. And so a universal fund was established, and there were black telephones where people could dial up, even if they lived in what my father would call at that time Timbuktu. So, but it was a national priority. This must be a national priority, and unfortunately, it has not been for this administration. We rank 16th in the world today as we sit here, the United States of America, where we have the technology and the know-how and the innovators and the creativity, and we rank 16th in the world. The good news is that we just inched ahead of Russia. The bad news is that Korea, Latvia, Lithuania, and others are ahead of us. So this has been a passion of mine to expand broadband, and I've offered legislation to do that, to use the fallow part of the spectrum that's not being used, and that be put out for auction with the caveat that whomever wins that auction offer to consumers across the country in 10 years or less free broadband services. And in the AWS-3 spectrum. The good news is that the FCC is considering that legislation.
Yes.
There's some testing that's going on. There are others that have thrown sand in the gears, of course. People are always for competition until they think it's going to compete with them. And, but I love consumers. I have a devotion to broadband, and I want to see the United States of America be number one.
One of the conditions, if I'm correct, with the FCC's proposal is something to make sure that pornography can't be accessed.
Exactly, and that was in my legislation as well. Chairman Martin, of course, has cared enormously about that issue, I think sometimes to the exclusion of others. And I've said that to him, so I can say it on the air. I said it on the air in the committee hearing. But I think that that's appropriate in the bill. But the intent, the overall intent, is that we broaden broadband out, and that once and for all we take it every place in our country. This is an economic issue. It's an educational issue. It will add to our economy, and I think that every American is deserving of it, should have it.
I think one of the wireless companies this morning expressed a little bit of concern, only for concern of those who operate 3G networks, and if you have this kind of free service out there, it may impact those who operate on that. Do you share those concerns, and should the FCC work with wireless companies in the testing of this?
Well, they are. They are. They are testing. In fact, the chairman reported this morning that testing had already taken place and that there was a report on it. But I think that we need to separate testing from throwing sand in the gears.
You said that twice now. Right.
Yes.
What do you mean?
Well, because there are some, having paid a good amount of money for their spectrum, don't really want competition on either side of them. Look, I don't want interference as well. But there are ways to deal with this, and to be fair to everyone, but not to use interference as an excuse to kill the proposal. And there's a difference between the two, and that was the distinction that I was trying to make by using the phrase throwing sand in the gears.
Well, wireless broadband would be an interesting way to achieve deployment, but there's also discussion, potentially whoever's in the White House next year, of a national initiative. What do you think a national initiative should involve, and how would it be funded?
Well, I think that we have to have national leadership, presidential leadership on this. When you look at the present administration, when they testified some time ago that if there's one person that has broadband in a zip code, then they include everyone in that zip code. We're only fooling ourselves by structuring statistics like that. The United States of America has the capacity to be number one, and there are, as the reasons I have stated. So, yes, we must have presidential leadership because it's been missing, and look where we are. We're number 16. We're scraping down the bottom of the barrel in terms of our position. That's not a source of pride to any of us, nor should it be. B, I think that we need to look across the spectrum, excuse the expression, to see what is unused and to optimize what is unused and how we can, again, broaden out the agenda for broadband. And I hope that a new president will always be open to new ways and not be stuck in a corner of the past. We have so many things that need to be done for our country. If there's an area where we lead in terms of science, technology, I mean, my congressional district is the place that does all of this. It's the home of Silicon Valley. So are there risks? Yes, but there are risk takers. And the risk takers are willing to make the investment in the new ways. So absolutely, this is going to require presidential leadership. But I also think that the committee has done some very good bipartisan work that a new president can build on.
Away from the topic of legislative efforts for broadband, where does the free market fall on this? Cable companies, internet companies, you know, don't they have a role in making sure areas that don't currently get broadband will get it?
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's to their advantage because it's all business for them. We know in those areas that are easier to build out, although there's been cable has made an enormous investment. I mean, billions of dollars in terms of broadband. But what's left undone are the harder to reach areas in our country. And of course, the stakeholders, the companies, cable and the private sector companies need to be involved. In fact, many of them, and many of them from my district, are clamoring to be involved in the area of white spaces. And we know that the DoD already has a technology and is able to deploy and use that. Many companies in my district want to be a part of that in the unlicensed area. So,
and for those who may not know, what are white spaces?
Well, they are spaces between the spectrum. It's unused, and all of this terminology.
You could broadcast.
You can exactly, and you can use it for newer applications, just as Wi-Fi has been applied. Newer applications, maybe innovations that we haven't even heard of, that haven't been born yet. So I think there's enormous opportunity out there.
It's very interesting because there's an awful lot of discussion of the benefits that could come from more broadband, telehealth, you know, being able to connect small businesses in rural communities. But the companies frequently say it's just so expensive when you're dealing with vast amounts of geography of the United States. Do you think that the United States should spend money to fill that gap where the private investment is not going?
The way I would answer your question, Ann, is did we stop with our interstate freeway system in the outskirts of major cities? Of course we didn't. We knew that the whole country had to be connected for the flow of commerce, for all of the reasons that we have a connected system. It's the same thing with this infrastructure. And the nuns that taught me, their logo was knowledge is power. And so the knowledge that broadband will carry to people across the country, in every corner of our country. My father used to say there's only one class of citizenship in this country, first class. Are we going to leave people behind? I don't think so. I wasn't raised that way. I don't believe in it. And you can tell how excited and energized I am by it, and particularly perturbed that we are in the position that we are now. I don't want 16 next to my country. I want number one.
What do you define as broadband as far as speed is concerned? Because that's always been a discussion too. What exactly is it?
The fastest of the moment. How's that? How's that?
That's a good way to put it.
The fastest that we can move in terms of our technology, and that you continue to upgrade that. We've done that with all of our other systems. We haven't left our roads alone. Well, I think in recent years, our public infrastructure has been left unattended to, and we've paid a big price for it. So there are such strong, sensible parallels to this. So we can't shy away from it. I mean, everybody's just got to jump 2 feet into this and really rev up and go. But it is going to take presidential leadership, because the lack of leadership really has demonstrated itself.
So you come from a district where there are an enormous number of innovators and people creating applications and websites and development. There's a lot of discussion now about privacy on the internet as all America begins to turn more and more towards it. Where do you stand on things like behavioral advertising, where they track you know, I go on a website, I go to another website, I go to another website, and somebody keeps a record of that.
Well,
What do you
first
think
of
is the right
all,
way?
I've always thought in the debates that we've had at the committee that privacy is part of the DNA of Americans. We're fiercely independent, and we do not want big government, big brother, knowing everything that we're doing, having access to that. And as a member of the House Intelligence Committee, the penultimate intelligence is to understand how people think. And so to be able to track the patterns of individuals, I do not think is anyone's business. There are plenty of ways to attract potential consumers, customers. But that seems offensive to me. And I also think that we have the opportunity to address privacy in newer ways. And that is there are many forms of encryption that help to protect privacy. And I think that maybe all members of Congress may not be up on that, but I do think that we have a real opportunity there. So I don't blame people at all. I'd be the first one to object, whether it's a company that's doing it in my district or not, even if it's their business. I don't think that that is... let's just say it runs against that, rubs against that all-American DNA.
So should they be telling people ahead of time before they get started, hey, you know, we're going to keep a record of this, or how do you actually manage
well, they can state something
privacy?
and say, do you want to opt into this?
Okay.
Not opt out.
Right.
I've had it with the opt out with the banks and the financial services and the very fine print of that stuff that comes in the mail to me. Every time it comes, I have to hand address an envelope and say, you're not sharing anything of mine with anyone, just to make sure that I've got it down pat. But that's not the way it should be. It should be the other way around. The burden should be on the company, not on the consumer, in my view.
This comes at a time when the Justice Department may open an antitrust investigation into Google and Yahoo over concerns over how they do their advertising. Do you think that should go through, and what do you think is the end result with the Justice Department possibly looking into that?
Well, look, if the Justice Department finds cause to be looking into something, then that's their responsibility to do, and I stand behind that. I've never set myself in between the legal matters, between the Justice Department and anyone else, whether it's a constituent asking me to write a letter for a particular reason to a judge or to insert myself in that. These things need to be seen through, and the American people have to have confidence that we have a robust Justice Department, which we haven't in so many areas, but just because there's someone in my district that they're looking to look at doesn't mean that I would ever stand in the way of that.
It's just the idea of technology companies coming together and sharing information. I think overall this gets the larger issues of privacy about how much information is shared by these companies and how much they hold.
Exactly. I think that needs to be determined. What is shared? How is it shared? How is it used? How is it kept? Is it sold? Those are all the things that people want to know. I mean, we have this sensibility that we may have 15 to 20 afterlives now, based on what anyone can collect on us. So it's difficult enough to address at the Intelligence Committee and what the intelligence community does. And now this is out across the country. So we're still having that debate in our country. But I think because there have been abuses, that the American people are that much more sensitive. And sensitive they should be. I don't blame them. I share that sensitivity.
Do you think that the net neutrality debate has taken a plateau for the moment, or do you think that it will continue to be something that is raised in the next Congress?
It will be raised in the next Congress. Rest assured.
What do we need to do?
Rest assured.
What do you think we need to do?
Well, we're going to start back reinvigorated on this. Again, protecting the consumer is something that I've done all of my public life. And I think that the consumer has a key role in this. They want to have a key role in it. Look, in the previous elections 2 years ago, that vote wasn't taken up in the Senate because one party saw, for the most part, that it was detrimental, and so they didn't want it raised. So this is powerful, not just politically. Politics responds to what people are thinking and where they're going. But net neutrality is alive and well, not only in terms of the term, which I don't know where the heck we get these terms from,
What's it mean?
but if you query anyone walking down the street and say, do you think that you should have a role to play in what you pick and choose, or should a company be able to stand in the way and block this or that? Hands down, it's net neutrality. So yes, it will come up.
And we need legislation, do you believe?
Yes,
to ensure that.
We do, and I'm an original co-sponsor along with Chairman Markey. We changed that, we tweaked the legislation somewhat this year. We have wonderful co-sponsors, but as you know, when a new Congress starts, then the bills are reintroduced, and we will do that.
Do you think the issue is given new life because of the Comcast decision when it came to from the FCC's decision on Comcast and the FCC's own interest in this now in injecting itself, if need be, in the role?
Well, I think the issue has been driven by many facets of it and what people are experiencing. Did that case maybe hasten the thinking of some? It very well could have been. But you see, when this area is left unaddressed, there are many things, the sands are shifting, and they become part of, I think, the need to address it. So I don't want to overcomplicate it. There are a lot of complications inside all of these bills and reasons and whatever, but there are some very powerful principles that drive the need for net neutrality. And I think that it will be the law of the land in the future.
We have time for one more question.
Well, Obama, McCain, what would the telecom policy look like under each?
Well, I hope myself that it is President Obama. And if you compare and contrast the two, Senator McCain, whom I respect, and he chaired the Senate Commerce Committee, I think in many ways represents an older view of where telecommunications are. And there are many manifestations of that. I wrote an op-ed piece that the San Jose Mercury News published about 10 days ago describing the difference. We need an FCC appointments that are going to not be about just a handful of interests. I mean, we know who the major players are in terms of telecommunications in the country, and I wish all of them well. But we need to have an FCC that's going to look into the future and say, who's the Comcast of the 21st century? Where is the competition going to come from? How are we going to bring up these baby or newborn companies in order to allow them to compete? Because when there is real competition, the consumer wins. New ideas, new approaches. And so that's what I'm looking forward to. That's what I want to see from the next president of the United States. And it's not only in telecommunications, but across the board, but most particularly in this area because we really set the standard in so many ways for countries around the world. We're a powerhouse in terms of technology and innovation, and then the application, and as they say, the rollout of that. Right. So I want to see a lot of rolling out. I want to see a lot more competition. I want to see innovation invested in, and I want to see an FCC that's really devoted to the public interest, and that this push for media consolidation, where you have fewer voices to the many, be done with. That just goes away, that it just dies of its old weight. We're a democracy. We're a democracy where many voices speak to the many. So I want to see PBS celebrated and protected. I love C-SPAN. I love what you do. I get a lot of information from you. I do, and I appreciate that. So that's what I'm looking forward to, and that's why I'm so hopeful.
Representative Anna Eshoo serves the 14th District of California, also serves on the House Telecom and Internet Subcommittee. Also joining us for this installment, Ann Viegel of Communications Daily. She's their Associate Managing Editor. To both of you, thanks for being on the Communicators.
Thank you. I thoroughly enjoyed this.